What's going on, you guys? It's your huggable hipster here, and welcome back to The Casual Nerd. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Roberto Blake of Create Something Awesome. What's going on? How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. I actually, for a while now, wanted to have you on the podcast. You guys, probably Roberto has been one of the biggest aids in content creation, not only for myself, but thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And he has courses that can help you on that. So if you guys want to check out all the work that he's been doing and what he's currently doing, be sure to check out the description below. Create Something Awesome. Hell yeah. So one of the main things I wanted to get into today with you was marketing on YouTube, niching down. There's a lot of things that I'm seeing currently on Twitter and YouTube where people in the gaming sphere are treating it as a hobby instead of a business. I see a lot of full-time YouTubers going into this thinking that, you know what, I'm just going to go for my passion and I'm going to create something that I love, but they're not thinking about it from a business standpoint. And I want to get your take on what you think of the approach. Do you think that they should be taking care of it as a business, or do you think they should be going at it with a hobby mindset while working on their 9-to-5?
I think you have to decide for yourself what matters to you more and what matters to you most. Some people probably shouldn't turn things they're passionate about into a career. I talk about profiting from your passion, how you can turn it into a career, but that's not necessarily right size in everybody's life. Some people are not best served by that. A lot of the people I work with are best served by becoming full-time content creators. They're able to leave jobs where they don't feel valued, or like I did, and where they may not be making enough money, where there's a cap on their salary, where the work is just so exhausting and emotionally draining, or it's not physically sustainable for them to keep doing it. So for them, being able to do something where they can work from home, set their own schedule, set their own hours, have more agency and autonomy, more freedom, wildly practical decision for some people. But it all depends on your temperament, Ariel. Like it comes down to what you want more and what you want most. And so you can be a full-time content creator, even as a gamer. I've worked with a lot of people in Supercell, for example. I was brought on as a mentor and a coach by Supercell and AMG for Supercell creators playing Clash of Clans, Clash Royale. And I helped grow quite a few of them to over 100,000 subscribers. The real struggle for a lot of them was the monetization side. It wasn't growth and strategy that a lot of them struggled with. Some of them did, and we grew a lot of channels by embracing new formats. For Clash Royale folks, vertical live streaming and YouTube Shorts was game-changing for creators like Juicy J, who is a Clash Royale champion. He's crushing it right now. You know, we developed some strategies for him, especially around sponsorship and brand deals. I was able to have a really good impact with him. There were a couple of other people like Matic and some other folks that I've worked with. But the main thing that it kept coming down to was I noticed that there's a radical difference in the personality type of someone who wants to be a full-time creator more than anything, and someone who wants to have fun and enjoy gaming and streaming, and that matters more to them than money. So it's not that there's a right or a wrong until you make a decision about what matters more and what matters most. If you need expression and an outlet more than anything, and being full-time would be too much pressure for you, maybe you shouldn't be a full-time content creator and you should treat it like a hobby. The problem is people, to some degree, want to be validated with full-time creator results from hobby creator behavior. That's the problem. There's nothing wrong with just doing this for fun and a hobby. But then I think that person shouldn't worry about growth, and they shouldn't worry about things like monetization. They shouldn't use those milestones to be emotionally invested in. My advice for people who want to express themselves and have fun, mostly, unless I know them personally, my advice would mostly begin with, okay, have fun. That's it. Like, it would, if you want to do this full time, that's another story.
Yeah, and it takes on its like another life of its own whenever you do something full time, because I didn't even think of this as a full time job necessarily, in quote, until I got into my 5th year doing it, because I always had that kind of rose-colored glasses view of YouTube when I first started doing it, where people like put impression on me of where, oh, you know, you can try for the viral video. And I realize that's so funny now to think of the viral video and the concept behind that. Like, what do you think of content creators and just the idea of general and trying to get a viral video, because it's so unstable?
88% of all videos ever uploaded to YouTube have less than 1,000 views, according to a case study by pex.com, and this was backed up by another case study done by vidIQ. And so this was pre-YouTube Shorts, so it's just long form only for anyone who's like, well, because of YouTube Shorts. No, it's not because of YouTube Shorts. This was right before YouTube Shorts. This was right before the pandemic. They did this case study. And that was all videos across YouTube, 88% of them less than 1,000 subscribers. I think we ended up getting numbers back to where we realized that like something around the neighborhood of 0.6% of videos have over 1 million views. Only 1.3% or so have over 100,000 views. So it's actually, and I think more than 40% of videos never got 100 views on YouTube. And so most creators do not realize that they're doing better than they think, especially the small creators, and they get very emotionally abused by their own expectations. 90% of content creators on YouTube across the world, there's over, and I talked to Amjad Anif, the VP of Creator Products. I've talked to him multiple times. I've interviewed him twice on my YouTube channel. I've met with him at least 5 or 6 times at YouTube events. I've spoken to this man for over a dozen hours, and he's one of the senior leadership in YouTube. I talked to him. I talked to Kim Larson at YouTube, who's over the product managers. I talked to Neil Mohan, the CEO of YouTube. My understanding is that based on something that YouTube themselves put out, Neil Mohan put this out in his creator letter to YouTubers. 3 million people are in the partner program. There are 114 million YouTube channels worldwide. Now, if people want to go off of Social Blade is not 100% accurate on everything. But Social Blade tracks 70 million channels worldwide, but it doesn't track channels that are under a certain subscriber count. And it also doesn't have accurate data in every country in the world either. So Social Blade, even with all of its inaccuracies, says there's 70 million roughly channels worldwide. And so you'd get down to, okay, well, Roberto, what about inactive channels? Okay, so there's still 50 million minimum active uploaders to YouTube, according to every source that I've talked to. Everyone I've talked to at YouTube, there's a minimum. And, you know, you don't hold them to the fire on this, because they didn't have the data in front of them, but they were guesstimating from what they know from internal reporting. There's a minimum of 50 million unique people uploading to YouTube every single month as creators. Now, there's almost 3 billion viewers in terms of consumers. I just want people to understand the scale of what we're talking about here. So there's a minimum of 50 million people actively uploading and competing on YouTube every single month. There's 100 million creators worldwide, whether you want to say they're active or inactive. 100 million people have tried to be content creators on YouTube. Not even 1 million people, Ariel, have silver play buttons in YouTube at all. There's only 3 million in the partner program, which means my version, the most realistic version, is that means 3% or so of people have become monetized on YouTube in the entire world, 3%. If you want to go, well, active uploaders, active creators, fine, 6%, just to get into the partner program. There's a very good chance that any small YouTuber watching or listening is doing much better than they actually think they are, and they just don't have realistic expectations. This is a long and roundabout way of saying I do not care. I do not give a flying crap about viral videos at all, and I don't care about viral video strategy. I believe that it's so ridiculous, so rare, and so out of reach that nobody should care about it, and it's a nice to have. It's a cherry on top, and you should just focus on building a nice banana split. Just get yourself some ice cream, get yourself some bananas, get yourself some whipped cream, get yourself some caramel and fudge. The viral video is the cherry on top.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, I remember when I was first experimenting with different content types on YouTube. And I think you even remember when I came to you and said, why are these videos not working? What's happening with the channel? How can I grow this? And I realized that, and this is going to lead into the next topic we're going to discuss, is niching down. And I cannot tell you how well it has worked. I can only speak from my experience with this, but I've seen it work with other people as well, where they will focus on one thing, and that one thing that they're passionate about will lead not only to monetary success, but them just being able to focus in on how they want their channel to grow. And
didn't you 5x your growth and like 5x or 10x your baseline of views by doing that?
yes, I focused primarily on Souls and Souls-like creation, on lore and discussing the content within those games and playing them. And not only did it grow my channel, I think by over 500 to almost 1,000 subscribers in less than a year. It managed for me to take a lot of load off of me and be able to decrease burnout as a result.
So you literally stopped struggling when you niched down. When you niched down, you stopped struggling. You started getting a predictable view floor. You ended up getting a massive increase of engagement. And because you were finally seeing results for your effort, you stopped burning out and you stopped having as much anxiety around validating your content.
Exactly. And that's, I think it's the key points that you just brought up, are validating the content. That validating your identity and validating who you need to be through content isn't the way to do YouTube at all. I just want to make that very clear for everybody who's watching. Your content is a part of you. It's not the whole picture of you.
I think the problem of platform identity and view validation is probably, and I talk about this in my book, you know, in my book, Create Something Awesome, and this isn't just a book plug. It's like, I'm the only content creator, I believe, that wrote a book about content creation where I dedicated 4 or 5 chapters to the mental health of creators. I think I'm the only person to have done that. And it's important because I wanted to take a nice broader view. And my book isn't just about YouTube. It's about being a creator, and it's about the aspects of it around monetization, audience development, reach, but also making this right size in your life and realizing that this is, if it's a hobby, it's still a lifestyle choice. If it's a career, it's absolutely a lifestyle choice, but it's also a very, big commitment, and it's a big deal. So there's a lot that goes into it. That's why I don't believe in just the willy-nilly passion, haphazard approach to it. It's not that passion isn't important, but you know, I preach the Japanese philosophy of ikigai. Passion is just 1/4 of ikigai, and that's kind of the issue. Is if you want to be a successful content creator, what you're passionate about has to also be something you're good at, or you have no ability to create value for others. In that case, it's just selfish content. It's self-serving. And what most content creators, the reason 88% of people struggle to even get 1,000 views is because they can't admit that they're just doing self-serving content. They're doing things that they're passionate about, but not considering whether what they want to do and how they want to do it has any value to others, in which case you can't be surprised that you're not attracting people if everything you're doing is to satisfy the self.
Exactly. And that's actually, I remember you discussing this in a coffee talk with Viper at one point, and you guys were discussing exactly that, and it made me kind of more focused. Well, let me experiment. Let me see how I can maximize not only my growth, but the potential that I have to create something awesome, no pun intended, to create something that is worthwhile, not only for myself, but for the viewer. And I did a few guides on parrying in Bloodborne, which I didn't see a lot of people doing at the time. I thought, okay, this is actually something that's needed in the market. It's something that's valued. It's something that not a lot of people like doing because they just don't know how to, or because they don't want to in Bloodborne. And I put out a guide for that, and a lot of people were like, oh, you should do more of this, you should create guides, you should do this. And that was the birth of Soulsborne Academy, and from there on it niched down.
You realize, all right, so I don't even know if you fully realize or grasp what you did. See, most people's frustrations in life, as much as this has become a meme, and gamers can learn from this, is most problems, frustrations, hardship in life, almost all hardship in life, and gamers really understand this, I think, or should. Almost all hardship in life is a skill issue.
Yes.
All hardship in life is a skill issue. The game is the game. Think about it. in any game, you are walking right into. I mean, the game is not worthwhile if it's not a dystopia, right? If the Dark Lord hasn't been reigning terror for 1,000 years, what's the point of playing the game, right? It's like, it's like, only 100 years of a Dark Lord. Y'all are soft. Like, so, right? So you have to go in with, okay, the world is doomed. Skill issue anyway. Skill issue. Why is the world doomed? The world is doomed because it's a skill issue. Y'all couldn't take the Dark Lord, really? Y'all had to wait for me to be born, manifested. I had to grind and show y'all how it's done. Y'all couldn't beat the Dark Lord without me. Everything in life is a skill issue. If you make the assumption that everything in life is a skill issue, then, and you work on that, you will have value to others. And that is how you end up bringing yourself to a position within a community, is by being of value to others. Now, the thing is, it won't always be the thing you're most passionate about, which is okay. It's nothing wrong with saying, I will take my third or fourth passion on if it's my first or second level of skill, where there is a gap in the market of people that can be served by it, meaning, hey, people really need this, and I don't hate it, and I'm really good at it. And if you want to be validated, then what's better than being validated by people being grateful to you because you served a need that went dismissed, underserved, overlooked, was not being provided for. So when you provide value to others when no one does that for them, that creates this loyalty to you, and then people validate and praise you and show up for you, and then that makes you more passionate about the thing that you're good at, because you're seeing a reward for it. You burn out as a creator when you keep being passionate and chasing something you're passionate about, but it never manifests in you knowing that you never mastered it. You just are enthusiastic, but you're not getting anywhere. You're not seeing yourself even level up. And then you're not getting any praise from anyone, because who is praising someone for not making progress or not delivering? So the thing is, it is very important to pursue the passions that you are capable of growing from and that can create value that serves others. And then you have to do something that people really don't love sometimes, which is you also have to figure out how you're going to make money. You have to actually then monetize that. So what I believe niching down is this. For me, niching down is not choosing a topic, it's choosing a people. It's choosing a people to serve. It's choosing a community of people. And then people then have this other thing they do. They then go, fine, I'll serve a community where we're interested in the certain things. That's good, but it's not great. Great is when it's not only like-minded people who share your interest and your passion, but like-hearted people who share your values. Then you will have less conflict in your community, and then you will have less inter-community conflicts and fighting, because if all it is you like the same things but you don't like them the same way, you'll end up with infighting. You see a lot of this in nerddom right now and in communities. I think communities are fine to gatekeep, personally. I know that's a controversial opinion. I actually prefer if communities gatekeep, because I think if people are able to say, hey, this is how we do it. This is how we do it over here. This is how we do it over here. And if you don't like that, go do you guys' thing over there. No harm, no foul, but we're going to do this over here. So, like, if you're classic WoW players, y'all should gatekeep the lore and the nature and the culture and community of classic WoW, and not have newbies and tourists. I mean, why should you have to change the community you guys built for the last 20 years to accommodate tourists? They should come to the community and accept the community as it is and say, I love the way you people are, and I'm taking you guys as you are. I'm not asking you to do it differently for me. And I think that people should have their own communities where they're able to show up as they are. And that's a different take on gatekeeping. So
yeah, it is.
I just don't think you have to be aggressive about it.
And that's the thing. You reminded me, there's a video I actually did on gatekeeping in the Souls community, and that's a more positive take on gatekeeping, I would think, because most gatekeeping that I see in the Souls community is where they're telling people you can't use ashes, or you can't use summons, you can't use an NPC, and it's just like, well, there's positive gatekeeping and there's also negative gatekeeping, and that's really interesting that you bring that up.
I think people should I don't think that tribalism has to be inherently bad. I think it should be a we do this, not you should do this. It's that we do this, And to be with us, you will learn and embrace our ways and the way that we do things, and we will preserve the community and culture that we built. And if you want to be in that community and that culture, you will adopt the culture and make it your own and take it in, instead of demanding that it be different. And the thing is, I think that people can then also be leaders and build tribes and communities of people that are like them, of like-minded, like-hearted people like them. And people should step up into leadership and say, if I don't like the place that I came from, or the thing that, or the way the community treated me, I will build a community of people like myself. And then it will be on us to preserve what I've built and to gatekeep that, so that there is a place for people that want to do it our way.
Yeah, because I'm seeing the discussion a lot of the time of where people want in quote unquote easy mode for Souls games. And I think that, a lot of the time Souls and Souls like don't really get a lot of notoriety because it is a difficult franchise to get into. I'm not going to down that part of where people would just say, the games are too hard. There needs to be an easy mode. And it's a lot of people put that under, disgustingly, the guise of wanting accessibility, and people need to realize that there's a difference between accessibility and ease of playability. They're two different concepts.
Right. They are different concepts. I think it's disingenuous to conflate them. What I believe is that if someone wants Souls-like content and Souls-like playstyle to have ease of play, that someone should become a developer, step up, build a lore and a world of their own with like-minded, like-hearted people, and should build something like that is playable to all and has that ease built in and has the challenge for people who want that. And then say, well, instead of demanding that Souls not adhere to the vision of its creators and the community that built it and made it popular, I will build an alternative for people who appreciate what they did, but that is more inclusive. I think you should build your thing and build a parallel. I would have no issues, and I would actually be happy to champion a parallel economy for people who want to make alternatives to things that satisfy them. And that makes the most sense to me. And I think that's what innovation looks like. I think innovation comes from, I'm not served by this, so rather than demand it change, I will build the alternative for people like myself to enjoy. And it should be built by someone who has the problem, by the way. It shouldn't be built grudgingly by someone who doesn't have that issue. And how can it be built and serve it well if it's someone that's outside of the issue? So it should be built by the people who have the issue.
Yep, I completely agree. And that's actually a great idea, because within the community, you see all these different types of comments that come across. And it's like, you know what? Why don't we, if you're not satisfied, create something that you will be satisfied with, and have the time, have the talent for it, and understand that it does take a lot of work.
Skill issue.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. And so there's another topic I wanted to go into that kind of parries off from that. But whenever we see... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It does loop into monetization because, by the way, the opportunity to monetize is disruption and serving the underserved market, and that's an opportunity, and it'll be hard, and you'll start slow and start small, but there's so much value in it, and you'll have loyalty that no one else has, because in a way you can be the only game in town if that's the case. And so then the monetization opportunity is there, because if you reach an underserved market, by the way, to sponsors you have a lot of value, because you don't need as much reach. If you're able to reach a group that no one else is, you now have a monopoly to use as your leverage in negotiating a brand deal, because there's a community that's being overlooked and they still want that community's resources and money. So the thing is, a sponsor can go to someone smaller if they are small but have a monopoly.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense, because if they see the community backing them up, and if they see kind of like a powerful potential, they're going to jump on it right away.
But that loyalty is leverage. Loyalty is leverage.
Yeah. And by the way, excuse me, I'm so sorry. My allergies have been very much killing me throughout the entire day today.
No, you're fine. I'm running on zero coffee, so...
So the next topic I wanted to get into, it's one that I'm still learning about and still growing along with, but I feel like a lot of people would do well to kind of listen to this next one. So perk up your ears for this, because we're going to be talking about the comment section of YouTube and Twitter. for new creators who are wanting to get into this full time, but their only kind of real hurdle is, well, what about negative comments? What about how different people perceive me? How would you go about telling a new creator or someone who has been in the business for a while who doesn't deal with negative comments very well? What would be your advice for them?
A lot of people's default is, suck it up and engagement is engagement. I don't fully agree. I've always had the policy of if something crosses the line into being personal, block, ban, delete is fine with me. And I don't consider that to be a free speech issue. I do believe it is when the platform does it as a third party. Excuse me. When a platform does it as a third party, that becomes free speech. When the government censors, that's free speech. But when you just decide to walk away from a conversation, that's right to association, which is under the First Amendment of free speech. You have the right to disassociate. In the real world, that's called you walk away, or you ignore somebody, or you wave them off, or you could be more aggressive about it, flip them the bird and walk away. But you are choosing to disassociate with yourself from that situation. You're choosing to create a boundary. Let's say you're establishing a boundary, you're asserting a boundary with the person that they've crossed a line with you, and the consequence is they no longer have access to you. And that's completely permissible as far as I'm concerned. Social media, you don't have an obligation to continue to engage with someone against your will. And I don't think there's any shame in that. I don't think there's any cool points for getting someone to block you. I don't go around bragging that Logan Paul blocked me. When I'm being especially petty, I might in close circles. But the point is, it's like there's not some glory in being blocked or banned by somebody. Or, they walked away. It's like, no, that says that you're probably being a jerk if someone felt the need to do that. There are situations where some people could be overly sensitive to things, which is not. It's important to understand when something is a criticism and it's a valid criticism versus when it's in bad faith and when it's an attack. So I'm fine with ban, blocking, and deleting anything that's an ad hominem attack on you, personal features, characteristics, personal attack on your character that's unfounded or not supported by any evidence. It's fine to do that. I feel if people are being very rude or aggressive or making the experience for other people in your community bad, that it's fine to block, ban, or delete them, kick them out of your Discord server, whatever. Because if you were a public speaker, like I do stage presentations, as you know, I've done like about 100 plus stage presentations over the last 10 years. If someone were heckling, they'd be kicked out because there's other people who paid to have that experience and they're disrupting the experience and they're not supposed to be the spotlight. They're not the talent. So they shouldn't be going out of their way to get attention since they're not the talent. And it's the same thing in a community, that if someone is disrupting the experience and making it harder for people in the community to have a good experience, that person should be cast out into exile, banished to the Shadow Realm for all eternity. That's that. I don't see a problem with that. And I don't consider that and as divisive as it sounds to people, I don't consider that to be a free speech issue. Like I said, I do consider it when platforms overstep the boundaries of a platform and act like a publisher to editorialize, then I do. If a government tells you what you can and can't say, then I do. But an individual person that is either the head of a venue or the talent or the leader in a community has the right to say what is and isn't permissible, your house, your rules, so to speak. And so I think that's very different. I also think saying I don't want to associate with you is very different. So I'm fine with people doing that. But again, just remember that not everything is an attack. And I would say try to cultivate the mindset of taking everything as a lesson and saying, because even when people have heckled me, and you've seen this, people have heckled me, I take it too far in how petty I am in proving people wrong. Aggressively petty. Like I will literally, I'm the petty type of person to where I would go and I would literally raise up and elevate somebody's like rival and put energy and resources into somebody's rival to prove how wrong they are and what a loser they are, to make a point. Like that, I'm that level of petty. It's like, okay, You want to be like that, or you want to be that way. It's like, I'm literally going to show you the error of your ways by now befriending and mentoring and backing your rival and raising them up to the place you wish you were, to make you understand how much your loss it is, because I'm incredibly petty as a person. It's my one vice. It's my one vice. You know, I don't do drugs, I don't smoke, I barely drink. So it's like, I gotta have a vice. I gotta have something wrong with me. And mine is being incredibly petty. Like vindictive supervillain levels of petty. Cobra Commander, Destro, Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine levels of petty, right? And my version of that is like, I'll just elevate your rival to the status you wish you had. And so that's the kind of like, and that's too far. That's like, I can do so much better things with my time, right? But I'll do that sort of thing. Or I'll take it too far, but in a good way, and say, oh, you had that criticism? Like, let me pretend for 1 minute you were acting in good faith. Actually, I'm going to hire my friend, and we're going to work together, and we're going to overhaul my entire website and make it 10 times better, and address every grievance you had, real or imagined, and now I'm better.
It's, you know what, it's the best kind of petty move that you can make, because not only are you proving to this person, wow, literally I just didn't understand, possibly, and they're never going to admit that. That's the thing, you know, they're never going to sit there and actually say, wow, I was wrong, and be an adult about things. They're just going to sink in their heels and continue to admit that, like, continue to think that they're right. When it comes to certain things, though, I feel like the one piece of advice that I would give people is, if you have the time and if you have the resources and money to do so, get a lawyer up. I would highly recommend that, because I'm actually currently in the position right now where my name, without my knowledge at first and without my consent, was put onto a hate website. So people might want to get a lawyer to kind of battle those things, put out a cease and desist, all that kind of stuff.
Those are extreme situations. You should, in the social media sphere, there are some great lawyers out there and legal advisors. Emily D. Baker, for example, Mitch Jackson, streaming lawyer, Ian Corazine, who helped creators during the COPPA crisis, and many others out there. There are probably some that I'm. My brain is again. It's coffee. It's lack of coffee. So there are several that probably have tremendous information, insights, and resources. I would say there are extreme situations in terms of libel, slander, and attacks, and in publications or in things like that. Issues in terms of material threats. I also think we're going to see a wave with, because I think both sides of cancel culture are incredibly toxic, but I talked to several lawyers about this, and there's a phrase that comes up that I've known about for years because I worked in advertising, and it's a phrase called tortious interference. And the thing is, cancel culture can bridge the gap of legal liability when you start, for example, going after people's sponsorships, because you're now interfering in a legal agreement between two other parties. There's a legal and contractual agreement between two other parties that you were never a part of, and then you inserted yourself in with the desire to cause material, provable financial harm to this person. Because the thing is, remember, for lawsuits to work, you have to prove damages. When you go after someone's sponsors, they're able to prove damages because there's an actual amount of money that was agreed upon that no longer is coming in, that you, through your interference, disrupted. So that's where tortious interference, and I'm not a lawyer, but I talk to them every week, quite literally. And so it's a liability issue to mob people and to disrupt their business. When you actively seek to deplatform them, if they are generating revenue on a platform, they're able to prove damages if you succeed. And what we will see in the coming years is we will see more lawsuits, and we'll see more precedent around this. We'll also see more slap lawsuits with regard to defamation. We will see more lawsuits around libel and slander in terms of things with rumor mills. In terms of hate websites and doxing, it's harder to prove material harm, either financially or physically. It's usually going after emotional damage. The easiest one is if you can prove defamation in a material way, though, which is harder, but that's the closest one. It's the closest one. Your lawyers are probably talking to you about this, and they probably know much more than I do, but there's a lot of difficulty in that. But I think there will be eventually new legislation around this, and sites that specifically only exist to incite harassment. But that will be a dubious one, and it'll be contentious because that has to be proven, because a material harm financially or physically has to be reasonable beyond a shadow of a doubt to establish.
Oh, now, yeah. Well, because of that and because of what happened, just as an example, there were several death threats and several things sent my way and everything like that. And they know, like, these people, I'm not going to name names, but these people have hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter, and they actually used to work in the gaming space, which is even more ironic. So that's why I always say to people, you know, if you are a bigger, even medium-sized creator like myself, get a lawyer, understand your rights, understand what you can do to prevent any sort of damages to come your way, emotional, physical, what have you. Another thing I would highly recommend is also to keep a circle small, because during those times you don't want huge circles and you don't want multiple voices. You only want to be able to have people you can trust in there.
Also, be careful about your comms. Be careful about your comms, because in a legal proceeding, as you know, there's a thing called discovery. And during discovery, they can request direct messages, and text and emails. So the thing is, you also want to be thoughtful about your communication. You always want to communicate in a professional manner. But also, if there's any documentation of communication, that should always be done thoughtfully, respectfully, professionally, and always with the idea that, hey, this is something that can be made public later. You should always take that into consideration. There are privacy laws, sure, but they don't apply in the legal realm once you get to the phase of discovery and then those things being made public. Also, not everyone respects the law. There's two-party consent states, but there's also single-party consent states. I would want a federal statute for communications, just because communications is so ubiquitous to where it has to be all parties consent for recording and for the transmission of communications and documents. I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole, but it's like, I just feel like the digital age has to evolve and change. I don't feel like, with all of the advancements in social media, AI, all these things, I don't think that the legal framework we have is up to speed on the ramifications of these new technologies, and that the laws exist currently in a way that can fully and truly protect people. But I also have very little faith in our lawmakers and government when it comes to technology, just because we have, to some degree, a gerontocracy. And I'm not trying to be super ageist. It's just that you need people who have truly lived with technology to understand its implications and its problems, and people that also are of enough of a ripe age to where they will still have to live with the consequences of decisions they make about technology. And so I think that that's thoughtful, way of putting that forward. But basically, bottom line out there, everybody be careful. Also, in addition to lawyering up, get liability insurance and get media insurance within your policy. One, get the gear insurance, because I had $10,000 worth of camera gear stolen while I was at a conference in Florida 2 years ago. But insurance covered me. I had it all replaced. I lost footage was the biggest issue, and just the sense of violation. But hey, that $160 a month paid for $10,000 worth of camera equipment being replaced. That was really good. But also, you want the errors and omissions insurance, which we usually call media insurance, is errors and omissions insurance. You want this because in case something goes sideways with a brand deal and they sue you, or you have to get into a countersuit situation with them. Like I had a friend, she got into a lawsuit with a major sponsor of hers where she had to go after them. You want that kind of media coverage and insurance. You also want it if you do any kind of commentary besides the sponsorship side. Sponsorship side is why it's very ubiquitous, why everyone should do it. Is because if you're going to work with sponsors. If something goes wrong in a contract, you have to go after them, or you ever have to, or the sponsor does something really bad, and then you speak out, and then they claim you broke an agreement. You want to be able to have that errors and omissions insurance. $160, $180 a month could cover you up to $1 to $2 million in damages. So you want that. Covers you, depending on what you get, $10 to $20,000 in gear if you get the gear coverage as well. Plus, if you shoot and you do IRL content, you have the liability insurance. So if anyone's injured on site, everyone's protected, and so on and so forth. A piece of camera equipment drops on somebody's head, you're covered. Someone slips, that sort of thing. Very important for creators, very overlooked. People go, well, I just sit in my house and I make videos. Okay, well, that's where if you are doing commentary, you want it in case someone claims libel or slander, and you didn't do that. You want that in case of you get into copyright issues with misuse or something, or the terms change. So yeah, just make sure you have that insurance coverage. It's very, very important. I have a friend who didn't. He's been battling a lawsuit for 3 years, and it's cost him $300,000 in court fees. Hopefully, when he wins, he'll get all of his fees back. That's kind of the deal: is loser pays both parties' fees. So, yeah, he's been in a suit because he exposed I have to say, alleged scammer and fraud. He exposed an alleged scammer and fraud. He had the guy, as far as I'm concerned, dead to rights. And the guy just used lawfare and has been disrupting his life in court for the last 3 years, put a lot of undue burden and stress on him. And my friend has been public about this, and over $300,000 in court fees. And yeah.
That's unbelievable. People underestimate how life-ruining a lot of something so simple could be, to the outside perspective. It's something of where not only is it emotionally draining, but the way the finances that people have built up their entire career can be drained in just an instant. It's unbelievable.
Oh, if he didn't have, in addition to his YouTube channel and sponsors, and if he didn't have the income he had from the real estate side of his business, it would have been life ruining for him. And it was emotionally stressful and debilitating for him. It's been a hard, journey. Me and him have talked about it extensively. We've stayed up for hours at night talking about it. And so this is why I also talk a lot about the business side of YouTube, as much as everyone wants to go into the passion and the rah-rah and do what you love and you'll never work a day. It's not true. There are a lot of things you have to deal with in the nitty-gritty of it. And in the details like this, and with people hating on you online, there's an emotional stress and burden on that you might not have if you did a 9-to-5 job where you have stricter boundaries and where you have some employee protections, and to where there's also some physical boundaries that can't be crossed. There is some benefit to the lack of stress of that. A lot of people think they want to be famous. They actually really don't, because with the love comes all the hate. So you have that. Then there's the financial stress of the lack of always truly, truly, truly reliable income. Although I don't believe job security exists in modernity anymore. I don't believe the covenant between the working class has been upheld in any meaningful way, and I don't think it's gonna be. So it's just gonna be disrupted by automation. So I think that, yes, there's always going to be some kind of insecurity there, but I think that when creators do the thing I talk about with diversifying their income streams, diversifying their platforms, you can build up more pillars in your income portfolio to offset financial anxiety, at least. But the biggest part of the financial anxiety is what happens if you are emotionally compromised to where it becomes very hard to do your job. That is the biggest vulnerability, is emotionally or physically being vulnerable to your income being disrupted, which is why I also advocate for building some quote unquote passive income streams, some automated income streams that don't require you to show up every day to still make at least your livable income. And so that's why I do the thing that I do and give the advice I give, and why I don't focus on viral views as a strategy or anything like that. I try to build the stable, sustainable, reasonable version of content creation.
Yeah, and that's a smart way to go about it too, because it gives people a realistic expectation of where, okay, you might not get viral off of one video for the rest of your life, but it will give you something of where, for example, like whenever I started to take content creation seriously, and I mean like waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning filming, because like I'm a part-time caretaker for my dad, so I have basically like multiple things that I have to do during the day. So it's about prioritizing yourself enough to understand that, okay, you have other things you have to take care of, but you need to put yourself as also an importance, or else it's not going to have that much of an impact. So for me, for example, I have 3 YouTube channels. After I discovered niching down and discovered how I can diversify everything, I have a music reaction channel. I just opened now a strictly gaming news channel for everything else I want to talk about, to discuss in a short kind of bite-sized long form content. That way people have pieces of news that are readily available for them, all ready to go. And then I have the other channel for Souls and Souls Like, and then I do video editing on the side as well. So it's multiple sources of income that can be just there, beneficial in case anything happens.
What I like about this is, one, you waited, I think, to really go into the other 2 channels until you got monetized on the first one, which is number one goal for people if they're going to start a second channel. I have a couple of parameters. If you're really serious, wait till you're at least monetized on one channel, because then you have a hope of duplicating that to your other channels if you start them, number one. And then you also have a source of income. Number 2, I would tell a lot of people, you're not quite there yet, but I would tell a lot of people, well, maybe get to 10,000 subscribers, since 90% of people don't get there, because then at least your focus and your energy got you past that hurdle. I'm actually fine with this for you, though, because here's the beauty of it. A lot of your content is interconnected, and there's some intersectionality and overlap of community with at least 2 of these things in combination. And the 2 other channels you chose are not editing intensive and are more streamlined in reaction format, which means you can be consistent at them because they're low lift. So if someone's going to take on another channel, I think it should be low lift. I think it should be like something where you always are going live, or where you're doing reaction screen record content, something with a very fast turnaround and not polished like editing. And then the passion project could be much more polished.
Right, exactly. And that's why I always keep like my main channel for more of the heavy lifting, because right now I'm sitting at, I want to say, a little over 4,600 subscribers on that one. So whenever I do content there, it's very lore heavy videos, it's the reviews, it's podcasts, it's stuff that has more of like the meat and substance to it. Whereas with the other one, for example, I'm doing a video that's going to be the top 5 indie games that are out right now that people can enjoy. So it's stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes more sense. And the main channel is evergreen, whereas the other stuff is more timely. The music channel can technically be evergreen. I have a student, Mugnify Reacts. He does music reactions, but he puts out 3 videos a day. He takes advantage of the notification system. He takes 3 videos a day. We increased his production value a bit. We went with the brute force approach with him. If you go look up his channel, we went brute force, but in the last 2 years of brute force, we've been able to brute force him to where he's almost at 100,000 subscribers. And so he's a member of my Awesome Creator Academy. He's been with me like from almost the start of his YouTube channel. With I think he had less than 3,000 subscribers, and now he's 3 years. So now 3 years later, he's almost at 100,000, which is similar to my journey, but it's a brute force. He went brute force, even more brute force than me. Like, but his content's also different, and it's also, but like he has music reactions are so evergreen, and he has some videos that have massive views. Now he has a bunch of other things that are like, dude, you have so many subscribers. Why is this video struggling to get 1,000 views or 2,000? But he's making so much. And the thing is, these videos can be slow burn, and it's all about when someone gets into whatever music or song or artist or whatever. So the thing is, he has a lot of potential because his back catalog is so massive. Here's the other thing people don't realize. His massive back catalog is a money printer.
Yep. I've seen that with a lot of music reaction channels as well. I mean, that's what I noticed whenever I started doing music reaction. A lot of people were thinking, oh, are you going to be doing a variety of them? And I said, no, the music that I'm primarily reacting to is rock and death metal. Like, that's my comfort zone. That's where I thrive.
I think, like we talked about with niching down to a community, it makes sense. The one thing I will say, in YouTube advice world, especially for gamers, because I've coached a lot of gamers to 100,000. I've even coached some to 1 million. worked with and then helped them build out other business models. Like I worked with A Drive, and so Dan, A Drive and his wife, like they grew their channel to 1 million. Now they're focused on their card game now, their TCG card game, Illustrials, which is huge, and it's been like, you know, record breaking. And we can't wait, like a record breaking when they first launched it, a record breaking Kickstarter strategy. Before that, I helped with the, and this is gonna come out in an upcoming podcast I'm dropping where I interviewed him. Like me and him in one of our coaching calls, we came with Team Shiny, which has been a big part of the brand, and that was their big merch drop. That was a 6-figure merch drop idea. That was a 6-figure merch drop idea with Team Shiny. Did very, very well for them. And they took a lot of the lessons over into Illustrials from that for the TCG game. And so it was really cool to see that. But what I would say for gamers, to make sure your audience gets some real meat and just not my heavy philosophies out of this, is that gaming has a disproportionate advantage to embrace YouTube being multi-format, and they have a massive advantage in being multi-platform, as long as you don't romanticize how you want your channel to be. If your goal was to be a full-time content creator, if you don't romanticize the vision of your channel and you go, I want at least 100,000 subscribers, I want to be a full-time creator, I want to be monetized, in my mind, part of what that looks like is it's less about a quality over quantity approach, because I do not inherently believe that is true until you have made it. That doesn't mean put out low effort, low value, low quality content. It means go to sustainability and go into grind mode, because you haven't earned epic level gear and stats yet, to use a gamer analogy. So my belief of gaming for YouTubers is you should look at it like you're playing a grindy game, like a MMORPG. Oh my God, I have to grind. Oh my God, my gear sucks. Oh my God. Like, and you have to level up, and it is skills. So skill issue, it's skills, gear, and grind. It really is. And that's the beginnings of it. And so in the beginning, I think you have to learn YouTube aggressively, and we learn by doing. So the thing is, yes, you're going to have to put out some content that you're going to feel initially is trash. You're going to feel, but not that you're purposely uploading garbage to YouTube. And it doesn't matter. 88% of all videos never get 1,000 views anyway. What's one more on the coal pile? This is your learning. This is your trial. You're supposed to fail. It's part of the process. Do you know how someone becomes the best gamer in the world? They find all the death flags. So how are you going to become this great epic YouTuber without understanding all the ways you could possibly fail and screw up, and understanding everything that doesn't work? You should aggressively learn and aggressively fail, but you should do it thoughtfully, intentionally, and you should be keeping a journal, in my opinion. And you should be, and this is what people do not do, journal your YouTube journey. Document what you're doing and how you feel about it and how other people are responding to it, and reflect and get an understanding of what's happening. So journal that, in addition to looking at your analytics, in addition to logging your analytics. Leverage emotional intelligence and figure out what you're doing, and then learn how to better attract people. There's also, I have another concept. You can be small, but don't play small, in the sense of at least look the part. You want to be an epic YouTuber, at least look the part. And by that, I mean aesthetics matter. Aesthetics matter. I don't think that there's a reason for being a small YouTuber to be lazy on thumbnails, lazy on your profile picture, lazy on your branding and your aesthetics and your social media. Look like you deserve 100,000 and 1 million subscribers. Look the part. And if you can do that much, you'll have people always saying you deserve it. And you'll have people insisting that you should have more than you have, instead of wondering why you are where you are. People, in terms of when you do get big, people will go, oh, you always deserved it. You always came hard from day one. That's why I call big creator energy. Go hard from day one. Don't be a perfectionist, mind you. But I'm saying, at least in terms of your aesthetic, put yourself together. Look the part. And if the thing is, if it comes down to it, keep it simple and clean and elegant, and don't be over the top if that's the case. If you're like, well, I have no design sense and I have no aesthetic sense, then embrace minimalism and simplicity and look for what looks clean, thoughtful, easy to understand, and elegant with the least effort possible then, if you don't have the design sense and you can't hire a designer.
It's interesting that you say that because I'm actually going to insert a picture here of what my very first setup was. And, you know, you're going to see it too because I'm going to send it to you in the Discord as well. That was my very first setup. That was what I worked with. It's going to probably be over here in the middle somewhere. But it was one of those things of where you really hit the nail on the head of where it's like I went from doing that to having this. And it's a growth. It's always going to be a consistent growth with how you work this. I was about to say this journey out, but it really is a journey. And it's one of the things of where I remember the first time I got a peripheral for Razer, and I thought, oh, this is good. This is the biggest moment. This is by far the biggest moment because it was from freelancing money. It was my creation. It was something that I put my heart and soul into. And that's the joy that I want other people to experience, because it is nothing like it of where I was able from freelancing money from video editing to buy a Nintendo Switch Lite, and the Mario game that came out. I think it was the Luigi's Mansion 3 when that came out, and I thought, wow, I can do this and I can fulfill my passion and I can do what I want and I can create a living actually. And that was the first moment that I hit the nail on the head of where it's like, okay, you really have to like hustle now to be able to make your vision come a reality, because it's proof. There's actually like tangible proof that it is possible, and it's not easy. I don't want anyone watching this podcast thinking that it is easy by any means, because it's not
easy. But I think people should simplify it, because if something's not easy, if something's hard, then make it hard and simple. Then it's like if someone wanted to get in shape, it's hard but simple, because the discipline is hard and everything, and doing push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and lifts is hard. It's challenging, but there's nothing complicated about it at all. There's nothing complicated about lifting heavy things. Like, it's like lift heavy things, eat less food, walk more steps. You could literally simplify getting a chiseled body down to like you could simplify it to like 6 simple steps and get there, you know? And so if you make it more complicated than 6 simple steps, you're probably overdoing it. You're probably doing too much. And so that becomes procrastination, anxiety, because when you make something too complicated, you have anxiety about how many fail points it has. So if you simplify something, it has less failure points. And if it has less failure points, you can approach it with more confidence. And then if you're consistently approaching something with confidence, improvement will follow. And so that's what my belief is, even with YouTube, is simplify it down to, if it comes down to it, simplify it down to, even me, simplify it to a 1 light setup. Simplify it to find and go and get just go ahead and get mic'd up. Like, get a no-fail microphone. Get a no-fail microphone. Find your no-fail microphone. And get it as close to you physically as you can. And, okay, no-fail. I got my no-fail microphone. Doesn't have to be the most expensive thing. For a long time, I tell people, you can go and get a $30 lavalier microphone, pin it to you, run an aux cable directly into your camera. Now you don't have to worry about syncing in your editing. Now you've got a no-fail audio system. You have a no-fail audio. As long as that aux cable doesn't die, you have a no-fail audio system, and it's wired. Okay, fantastic. Get a 1 light setup. If you don't wear glasses, save up $60, $80. Get a ring light. Get one of those ring lights on Amazon, like Newer or somebody, or even Elgato. Spend $60 to $120. Get a ring light if you don't wear glasses. Okay, fantastic. 1 light to rule them all. 1 ring light to rule them all. Okay, done. Like me, I use one with a lantern diffuser from Aperture. So you get that. Okay, fantastic. If the only camera you can afford is your phone, so be it. Figure that out. You could, but I need to see myself and the selfie camera sucks. Okay, cool. Spend $60. Get a magnetic monitor that's Bluetooth that syncs to your thing, and you literally will have turned your phone into having a monitor on it and becomes a studio camera. Mount it. Okay, you accessorized. Done. Get a $20, $30 Bluetooth microphone to plug into the bottom of your phone and lav up with that. Boom. You've got your no-fail audio. You've got that. You've got your do the best you can with what you have. If you want to compete with the biggest YouTubers, you spend about maybe less than $2,000. I guess you could put it on a Best Buy or Amazon card. I don't like debt, but fine. But if you want to compete day one with the biggest YouTubers, get a Sony ZV-E10. Get a 20, get like a 20 or 50 millimeter lens for it. Go get yourself a Ulanzi tripod. You want a lens that can do at least f2.8 or f1.8 so you can get that blurry background look like what you see I have. Because like if I switch my cameras to this camera angle right here is a Sony ZV-10 with a 20 millimeter lens. That lens is maybe a $300 lens. It's about probably 200 or less used. You can probably get this body used for like $500 now. So it's like not even $1,000 there. I have for my desk, it's the Elgato lights. Those are like 120 a piece. You can get a good light or two for like $100, $200, and you'd have some of the best lights that money can buy. You can get that. You can get some Amaran lights. You can do that. Okay, and then the best microphones money can buy are between $100 to $400 right now is the best microphones like money can buy, or $100 to $400, whatever type of microphone you need. Desktop, lab, wireless. Like right now, the best wireless microphones known to man, you get two of them and a receiver, and it's the DJI version 2 wireless mic.
Oh, nice.
$350. You get two wireless mics. They have internal recording as well, so you literally have a backup audio, so no fail audio. $350, and it's dual receiver, and that's a setup that works for podcast interviews, man or woman on the street interviews, solo recording, and you have internal recording, and you have the output for the transmitter to go into your thing, and it will work with your phone, it will work with your camera, and so literally no fail audio. The best wireless no fail audio is $350. So like I said, from a technical standpoint, if you want to compete with the biggest YouTubers in the world, you can spend about $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 and have a setup that will look like a 100,000 to 1 million subscribed YouTube channel, sound like a 100,000 to 1 million subscribed YouTube channel from a production standpoint. At that point, there's no excuse. It's now a skill issue on the quality of your content, mastering that gear if you have it. It's then down to the skill issue of your personality, your performance on camera, and the way that you structure, the way that you script, the way you storytell. But for views is topic, title, thumbnail, and timing, all for that target audience. So that's a packaging thing, and that's the reality of YouTube. If you want to get more views, I'm going to tell you, start with, if you suck at thumbnails, just hire a thumbnail artist, pay them their $50 or $75 a thumbnail, if that's what you have to do. If you can outsource it, there are plenty of people who $15 to $20 or $30 is life-changing money in their country. You do not have to, in my belief, you don't have to focus on only changing the life of someone here if you're an individual. Companies, I feel differently. But if you're an individual, you can bless somebody overseas with what you can afford in your budget, and they can bless you with something that delivers for you. And then when you both are in a better place, you can do more work together, and it'll be great for everybody. So like for me, like I feel that there's this opportunity for people if they just say, well, all right, well, Roberto, even with that $30 or $50 they have to get, it's like, okay, if you're not getting it because you're not monetized, freelance like Ariel did, like freelance and go make that money doing some other skill for somebody else. Photography, video editing, writing, whatever it is, and then pour that into your passion project, but then give it its due. Put the money into the thing. Because you think it deserves it, and you think your audience deserves the best, and you want to show up and say, hey, look at how hard I'm trying for you. And that brings in some results. People are attracted to high effort content in terms of the upfront packaging that you did for the thumbnail, the effort you put into crafting a very good thumbnail, and the fact that you brought that to something they also care about, like again, souls or whatever it is that you're covering. They see, if they can at a glance see how hard and how much you brought effort, and they can see the value up front, they're going to give you a chance. Then when they hear good audio and they see good video, they're going to say, oh, well, that's quality. I came here for the packaging, which I interpret as value and effort. And I'm like, and now I see that effort is consistent in the quality of the production and editing and the performance. So I'm like, okay, wow, this person deserves my attention. Wow, I've given attention to people who don't work this hard, who do not put in this much effort at everything. If you combine that and now you can be consistent, if you can do that and then be consistent on top of everything else, people are going to be loyal, and people are going to, and this is how you create return repeat viewers. This is how you get people advocating for you. Sponsors notice this sort of thing. So that for me is big creator energy, is when you like go hard. I don't think you have to procrastinate. I think you just have to throw yourself aggressively into hard work on something simple that has been proven over and over again to yield a result. I think when you work really hard at something you wish could produce a result is why people burn out, and when people feel, oh, Roberto, but everyone works hard on their YouTube channel and doesn't grow. They work hard on things that have never been proven to scale. If you work hard on things that are simple and not complicated consistently over time and have been proven to work, then you can win by virtue of brute force.
What was the kind of butt kicking moment that you decided, okay, I'm going to start YouTube, and then I'll discuss mine?
Oh, I came to YouTube when I first started, so I didn't really have that because like I was 20 something. I was like 22 when YouTube was built. So like I was early because I was OG internet anyway. Like I was on the internet from the time I was 13. I turned 40 this year, Black Don't Crack. And I also managed to win a couple of Mortal Kombat tournaments in the 90s. So I think the Elder Gods just decided aging me. Yeah. So forever young. So the
Always.
yeah, so the thing with that is I'm an old head. I'm an OG internet head, AIM, IRC, IRC chats and everything like that. X-Site forums, Angel Fire, GeoCities, Lycos, and Real Player.
Oh my God, I remember that.
LimeWire, BearShare, BitTorrent, like people, OGs know what I'm talking about, right? So since I'm OG internet, I'm also OG YouTube. I'm an OG YouTuber. Me and my friends started YouTube in 2006, but it didn't go anywhere. We were trying to do our independent filmmaker thing. I was doing lightsaber effects. I was doing rotoscope effects. I did and made using After Effects on my $600 laptop that I had to have a Targus chill mat for because it was a crotch burning laptop. It was like I was overworking it. It was like this Asus laptop that was like, destroying by overworking it, like melting its internals probably. I souped it up with RAM, and I think I like souped it up with more RAM than the warranty allowed for. So like what I did was I was doing like the Hadoken effects from Street Fighter. I was doing particle effect stuff. I was doing lightsaber rotoscoping. We were doing all that kind of stuff, but like trying to run a channel with your friends doesn't always work out, and so too many heads involved, too much competing ideas, blah blah blah. Eventually I decided to do my own YouTube channel in 2009, so 3 years later, but I barely uploaded to it. I was doing a lot of stuff in between jobs and freelancing at the time. And so I uploaded very rarely over those 4 years on my own, but I came back to it in 2013. Now, I had moved to being a full-time freelancer. I had left my job in corporate doing marketing at a company. It was at an IT company. I was doing, it was in the web hosting space. So I was web hosting, website designs, co-location servers, domains, that sort of thing. Kind of like GoDaddy. Basically, it was like we were a competitor to GoDaddy back in the day. But I was with a company that started before them, like because the company I was with like started back in the 90s in 96 or whatever. So GoDaddy originally was like a reseller for them or something. So the legend goes. So like we were doing all this stuff and I learned a lot about technology. I learned a lot about networking and Cisco administration and, VPS and just all these really cool things. And I was a web designer. I was a front end guy. I did a little bit of development. I also was an ActionScript Flash developer back when Flash mattered. So you guys remember Newgrounds and Flash animation and that stuff back in the day. So all this is to say I was an OG internet head. So the thing is, there was no impetus to like, oh, let me start a YouTube channel. I was there from the beginning when being a YouTuber didn't mean something. There was no identity.
Oh, that's interesting.
Super OG, like when, okay, cool. We can finally upload videos for free without a 20 megabyte limit. Because like I come from when you had a 20 megabyte limit with Fire, Lycos, and GeoCities and Real Player and like all that stuff. So like, you're like, oh my God, unlimited? Really? How are they doing this? Is this a scam? Is this legit that you can upload videos for free? For real? Like, so, and you have to remember the iPhone hadn't been invented yet. So even the convenience of making video, at the time, I had to buy one of these. This was $300 at the time, which would probably today's
Oh,
money be 500. Yeah, Sony
I
HD
remember
Webby.
that. Yep, I remember those.
Yeah, this was when flip cameras were new, when flip screen cameras were new, and when stunning 5 megapixels and 1080 full HD was new. So 1080 was new, and people don't realize that 16 by 19 aspect ratio was new. Like that was a revolutionary thing 20 years ago because we'd always had television and CTR and television. Old school gamers remember this 4 by 3, and they will remember coaxial and AVI cables, and they'll remember RF adapter. And the OG gamers will remember having to use an RF connector for their television screens back then, and have an RF adapter that ties into the coaxial part, and that you're a wizard, you're a super technician, because you can go behind the television and make the game system work. Like if you remember, like you remember, because that was the original Nintendo, Genesis, and Atari. And so that was like revolution. It's like, are you sure you know what you're doing? You're behind the television. What are you doing? Like, so that was a whole thing. I say all that to say, showing my age here of like, so there was no, oh, start a YouTube channel for like, I was there from the beginning. So for me, it was like this thing. And I was there early social media, and I was in marketing. So with me, it was that I enjoyed making and editing videos since I was 14, just like you. It just goes back way further. There was no YouTube yet when I was 14. YouTube would come 8 years later. So I was editing 8 years before YouTube existed, right? And what happened was I felt this desire to teach things that I know, and I was always like that. If I ended up learning something, I would teach my friends. There are times in school and in college where I'd out teach the teacher. And sometimes, I actually did know it better than them because I cared more about it and read more about it and practiced it more. Because again, in many cases, some of them were just doing it for a job. For me, it was more than that. It was something I was deeply passionate about, right? So yes, you can be an instructor and you could have gone through your academics and your education. And the thing is, you could still come up short to someone who's emotionally invested and spends more hours of their life than you and does it over the summer vacation for more concentrated hours. So in a lot of cases, since I was very into technology and computers, and I was in a college system where people reluctantly and begrudgingly were forced to embrace computers as professors, I did know more than them, and I did understand it more, and I was more invested in the future and the culture of it, and I was boots on the ground. Because again, it's like these people don't want to use computers. I was building them as a hobby, as I cared. These people didn't want to teach us about coding websites. I'd been doing it since I was 15. I taught myself to code at 13, and I'd been building paid websites for local churches at 15. I had already made money at the thing they were teaching us by the time I got there. Multiple times. So for me, when it came to YouTube had a thing that could really satisfy my ADHD brain with, you mean I get to use all my Photoshop and design skills because we get to make thumbnails and graphics. I can use my copywriting skills to craft titles and my background in marketing. I can use all the SEO stuff that I used from web design because I can use that to win the search engine that is YouTube and Google. And I can use all my video editing chops. And my biggest weakness will be that I have to perform on camera, and I hate public speaking and I'm awkward, but I really do like talking. So I'm hedging between, I like talking, but to people I know and that people I get along with. I like talking a lot, but not necessarily to strangers I don't know. I have to talk to strangers on the internet. That was my big bottleneck, was talking in front of a camera, public speakers, talking to strangers on the internet, while not trying to sell them something, because I was really good at retail. Ironically, I talk to strangers if I'm trying to sell them something when I was a kid in retail, because I like money. I liked money. But I also like looking smart and helping people, so that was kind of the deal, is, well, if I can help you find the thing you're looking for better than anybody else, then it's because I'm smarter and I can read you better and I can use my emotional intelligence and empathy to determine your needs in a way someone else can't, and I can communicate well. So it's a way of, oh, great, I'm better than the other salespeople. I win the gold star. I'm number one in sales this month in the district. I'm better than everybody. Fantastic. I'm validated now. So it was my scoreboard. The gamer in me, my scoreboard. You know what I'm saying? So like for me, I was good at that because I was overcoming a difficulty to win a scoreboard. So that was, again, how I hacked it for myself mentally is, it's that gamer in me. If I turn it into a scoreboard, then I can do it, Yeah, so YouTube, I hacked turning YouTube into a scoreboard, and then it helped me overcome the vulnerabilities in being more introverted and more reluctant to put myself out there and to take on the criticism of the internet. Especially, I came from a generation where you didn't put your real name and face out there. Everyone thought it was weird, and they were like, wait, Roberto Blake's your real name? And you're using your real name and your real face on the internet? Are you okay? And you have your own website, robertoblake.com. Why would you do that? You have your own. I mean, that's kind of cool, but why would you do oh, well, because you want to get work, you want to get business, you want to get clients, so I was a full-time freelancer. So one, I actually didn't have the pressure to make YouTube financially succeed because I was a full-time freelancer. It was, this might help my career and I enjoy it and I like teaching what I know to people, and people who value what I do but then can't do it might hire me, and that was working, believe it or not. It got me gigs, and this is the early days, and that's why initially, before I got to 100,000 subscribers, you might remember all my content revolved around skills and freelancing. It revolved around tutorials, skills, freelancing, camera gear, how to become a freelance photographer, how to become a freelance videographer, how to become a freelance video editor, how to be a freelance graphic designer, because I was doing multifaceted, multi-passionate gig work.
Oh yeah, I was subscribed to you the days of like 80K before you got to 100,000 subscribers. So I remember those days of where you were focusing on like very niche things, but then you went more broader with your topics and trying to help people from a multitude of backgrounds.
Correct. It ended up being a focus on content creators because it was my own evolution, because I think my own YouTube channel is just a reflection of my own evolution. All right, I'm a full freelancer. Let me teach you everything I know. Hey, I am getting... I'm consulting and doing social media marketing because everyone saw how quickly I grew my social media presence across platforms. Let me teach you about social media and what I'm doing with that and with public speaking. Okay. The content creation and everything I'm doing with that has led me to all these different revenue streams. Let me teach you about all my revenue streams. Okay. I have all this because I can create engaging content on the internet and I can market myself and my skills effectively. Let me teach you how to be a creator, because being a creator encompasses every other skill that I had. So that's where my philosophy comes from, is I believe that being a content creator can be this vehicle that is incredibly impactful and powerful, because you can take almost any bundle of skills that you already have and manifest it into value through content creation.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing that I learned. Oh.
Hobbies, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I learned very late into the game, no pun intended, but it was one of those things that the main driving force for me whenever I started YouTube, I started when I was 23, back in 2016. So it was right before I was about to graduate from college. It was at the end of horrible breakup. Oh my God. It was the end of where I decided I'm going to get sober from alcohol. I'm not going to do this to myself anymore. And I decided to fully throw myself into this new world, because I had done YouTube before, but it was for little videos here and there, little odds and ends, like, oh, let me do stop motion graphics. Let me do this. Let me do that. And it was never something substantial of where I had like my full head on my shoulders of a new one where I wanted to go with it. So I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to look for some inspiration. Let me look on YouTube and see what there is. And there was a video that popped up from Markiplier. If you're watching this right now, hi, you're the reason why I started YouTube. And I remember watching his video, Believe in Yourself. And there was something very specific from that video that he said that will always and forever stick with me, where, and I'm going to poorly paraphrase it right now, but people see a fire and they want to check it out. And they were going to say, oh, that guy's on fire. Why is he burning? And he's like, wait, no, he's onto something. And throughout the message of the video, it's just this constant reminder that you have to believe in yourself in order to create the thing that you want to create. And that really, really stuck with me. So that night I created a YouTube channel on April 5th, and I thought, let me try this. And actually, the YouTube channel itself was created in October, but the first video and the first time I actually tried to experiment with things was on April 5th of 2016.
Yeah, it's funny. You started relative in age to where I did, but 10 years after YouTube started relatively. Like YouTube was February of 2005. They got acquired by Google in November 2006, sued by Viacom in April 2007. Yeah. So like 10 years after like YouTube, relatively speaking, and after 10 years after I started is like when you started, but relative to the same age. And so that's really interesting. And I think that there's also a difference between the generation that got to quite literally grow up with YouTube in terms of getting to at least watch YouTubers, because there was no watching YouTubers when I was a teenager. Because like you became a YouTuber 10 years after YouTube started, but you got to experience high school watching people be content creators. And so my generation of creators, we had to build without the benefit of that example, which is also what made me want to teach the next generation of creators, because now people get into content creation. But have you noticed something? I want to ask you this. I'm going to flip the interview around. Have you noticed that now people emphasize skill much less and are chasing instead trying to find hacks and strategies to grow instead of building any kind of skills? Then that everyone dismisses learning cameras, audio, lighting, and won't even learn their editing software. No one bothers to spend 40 hours of training in editing software. No one does 40 hours of training in their graphic design program. No one spends 100 hours building the skill set before they even want to be validated by an audience.
Yeah, no, I have noticed that. And it was even prevalent whenever I was doing YouTube for the first few months. Like, I was so kind of gobsmacked by the way people were just trying to find these little bits and shortcuts into the way that they wanted their success to look like. Because a lot of people, when I started YouTube especially, had the image of what going viral was, and everyone put the emphasis on me when I first started. You got to find a viral video, you got to make it quick, and you got to make it snappy, you got to make everything very Logan Paul-esque. And it's like, I don't want to do that. God knows I never want to be like Logan Paul. And for me, my idea of success was making someone laugh. That was my idea of success. And seeing how people were like telling me like, oh, you should go on YouTube, find these like top 10 hacks of trying to become the top YouTuber overnight. And it's like, that's not how success works. It's a struggle sometimes.
And the thing that I hate is that people lump me in with that kind of content when it's like, it's the opposite of everything that I tell people and everything. And I don't care about viral videos. I don't believe in that. And the thing is, in reality, viral videos made a lot of these people, but also that gets overblown so much. And it got them a lot of their popularity and stats. But I'll even give some credit to like Logan Paul for all the dumb stuff he does. He plays more dumb than he is, and I would argue to some degree this is also one of the downsides of having a young audience in terms of the maturity thing. Not to take any accountability away from him, but it's like, the things that he and his brother Jake did well that no one credits them for is they changed YouTube thumbnails forever in about 2016. They redefined YouTube thumbnails, and they redefined the several genres of entertainment content, and were the beginning of the phase of creators that were not education creators that began to understand optimizing YouTube. Ironically, the Viners and that people, as much as people praise them for their authenticity, they were masters of optimization and gamifying YouTube and trends, and they did not pull punches. And they were some of the first people to open, be like, yeah, we don't do our own thumbnails. We have a photographer that we stage our thumbnails. We do a photographer. We get a designer. They started revealing that, no, we play a secret sauce. We take YouTube seriously. We treat it. They were the first entertainers, not tech creators like Linus. Because not photography people like Jared Polin. They were the first pure entertainment YouTubers, purely entertainment, to talk about treating it like a business and peeling back some of the even secret sauce of the fact that they treat it like a business, hire staff, do everything in a optimized manner, and that they even have a goal of, we're trying to get this many views or this many subs or doing this, and like treating it the way, like how when I came from corporate, like, okay, where's the leaderboard for sales? They actually cared about that stuff, and that redefined YouTube in a way that allowed for the creation of someone like Mr. Beast, and he studied them. In addition to Mr. Beast used to watch all of his YouTube help channels. He went to Vid Summit in 2016 because Mr. Beast and I both got our silver play buttons at 2016. And I was a speaker at Vid Summit. Mr. Beast was there as an attendee. He was a special guest of my friend Daryl Leaves, who runs the conference. Now Mr. Beast is a co-owner of Vid Summit with Daryl Leaves. So like, Logan and Jake Paul walked so Mr. Beast can run. Now, people can feel however they want about that, but there were legitimate contributions that they made to the modern content creators' understanding of YouTube that would not have been normalized without them, and would have been kept a lot longer, or only have stood in that tutorial and tech and education and product reviewer space of YouTube. So they did play that role, and I say that to say that a lot of your favorite YouTubers will play dumb on camera, and behind the scenes they're sharks. They optimize everything. They will tell you so much about luck, while they agonize and pour over spreadsheets and data and A/B test the hell out of everything. But they're going to tell you it's luck, while they have a team of people who have been masters of their craft, and they've hired the best people in the world on payroll. They have almost cannot fail situations. They've rigged the game for themselves in every way you can imagine, and they'll tell you about luck. That's hilarious.
I find it funny too, because it's like they're not being genuine with their audience, I feel. I mean, I'll be straight up about what I say. Like, I don't have a team or anything like that. It's literally just me doing all of this stuff. And, you know, in a grander perspective, I wouldn't have been able to get anywhere without my family supporting me. I'll be honest right there, because it is, people underestimate emotional support so much. How far a simple you got this, I believe in you, can go. And that is one of the biggest things of where I remember when I was speaking to you about this a couple of years ago, and I was still even gobsmacked that we were talking, you know, at all about this kind of stuff, because I looked up to you so much, and I still do, of where it's one of the coolest things that you are as open with your audience, and you were willing to kind of take me on to mentor me to a degree, to get me to understand that you have potential in this area. You can succeed. It's just about getting kind of your head out of your ass and understanding that the world isn't going to give this to you. You need to work hard for it.
Oh yeah, and that you have to understand that you have the ability to earn it, and that it's not that you're being denied something. It's that everyone has their boundaries and the terms and conditions. I'll give you a prime example. There are people who have set the boundary and the terms of conditions for what they will give their attention to. That's what YouTube is. As much as people cry about the algorithm, it's like, no, if YouTube gave you impressions, you're not the victim of the algorithm. If YouTube gave you impressions, you did not meet and cross the threshold you needed to for someone to let their guard down and give you that 5 or 10 minutes of their life that they will never get back. You did not earn that trust up front with somebody by bringing enough value to the table. Try again. And that sounds harsh and that can sound hurtful to people, but it's like, no, that person has a right to withhold 5 or 10 minutes of attention from you. You have to earn that and get them to lower their guard and not regret it. And that is done in a topic choice of, did you talk about something I care about? No, I'm out. I'm not giving you 5 minutes on something I don't care about. I have other things I can do. I have other people who will meet me where I'm at. Okay. Did you title something that meets me where I'm at? You're not. Okay, you didn't. Then you're not for me. Someone else is going to do that. I'm going to give them the 5 minutes. That's how it is. Oh, did you use this thumbnail to attract me aesthetically and to bring me in and to make me feel something? You didn't. All right, I'm going to find someone else who's more interested in attracting people like me. That's the answer. And therefore, it is on us to attract the audience that we want. And the only way you can do that is by meeting them where they are. And if we get too much into ourselves, if, like you said, you have your head up your ass and you're like, me, I want to be validated, get it, praise me. Like, if you don't meet people where they are, then you don't have a shot. And a lot of people refuse to make any change to themselves to attract the audience that they want. And to also be grateful and say, well, that audience I want is not as big as somebody else's, because not as many people are attracted to the choices that I've made, but I can accept that and say, but this is my tribe, this is my community, and I'm just thankful to be here. There's a sense of that as well. And so when I mentor people, I try to get people to see that more realistic perspective. And I think that's distorted sometimes by what big content creators say and do. Where I do blame the algorithm is the algorithm keeps showing us 100,000 million view videos as if they're normal. There's an emotional abuse element to showing someone always the top 2%. Because if you keep showing someone the top 2%, they'll never realize that they're the top 10%. They'll always just feel like a failure because the gap is that big. The gap between the top 10% and the top 1% is bigger than the gap between the bottom 0.1% and the top 10. That gap is not as bad by far as the gap between the top 10% and the top 1%. Meaning that, remember, the 90% gap is 0 to 10,000 subscribers. That's all. But the gap between being in the top 10% and then being in the top 1% of YouTubers that have, the top 1%, I think, would be over 200,000. Think about the gap between 10,000 and 200,000. It laps the gap between 0 and 10. 0 and 10 is nothing compared to that. So to go to the top 10%, it's a feat, but it's not an unreasonable feat. But the gap is several magnitudes. You go, oh, well, you're at the top 10%. It can't be that hard to get to the top 1%. No, it's infinitely harder than it ever was to get to than it was when you try to get to the top 10. It's several magnitudes. And that's why I try to bring people down to earth by giving them those numbers in Twitter all the time and one-on-one all the time and in my videos. Is understand that it takes so much of the burden off of you in terms of the performance burden, because most people just are not. They're putting that on themselves before they're ready. They haven't built up the skills and resilience to confront that challenge just yet, and they would be better served by taking small wins and acknowledging small victories.
Oh, that's okay. So you brought up something very interesting, and some people actually get annoyed at me for doing this. It's why I always have like a little mini celebration on Twitter with my community each 100 subscribers that is obtained. We just actually got over 4,600 a few days ago, so I'm just like, this is great, thank you guys so much. And I always do that, and I've been told actually that they're just like, you're so focused on the numbers, you're so well, it's like these people chose to subscribe to my channel and take their bits and parts of their life and invest it into what my content is, so why wouldn't I be grateful?
Yeah, I think it's fine to be grateful. I think your frequency of getting 100 has become so normal than you that you could ratchet that up to 500. You could ratchet that up to every 500. There's nothing wrong with 100, but I'm just like, you're hitting it so frequently that, just from a resistance training type standpoint and everything like that, it's like, okay, you could start thinking of 500 in the way that you think of 100 now. I'm not saying it's not some small internal celebration for 100, or even with your Discord for 100, but every 500. And part of the reason with that is not about people being less annoyed with you. It's about that in itself would show people how much further you're growing and how far you've come. That 100 is now 500. Public speaking for me, besides the fact that I didn't feel good about it in high school and all those things, and I felt like very insecure about it because I was bullied so much and I had a lot of anxiety about it. But low grade, I'm here and now I'm the center of attention for everyone to pick at all my flaws. Fantastic. Same thing with content creation. Public speaking humbled me when it comes to numbers, of the fact that I don't judge a video's merit on its numbers anymore, because I've come to appreciate how big a small room is. How big a small room is. I've come to also, coaching humbled me, because whatever people want to say about coaching and teaching people is less about elevating yourself above others. It's about being of service to others. People don't realize the humility and mentorship and the emotional investment that you make. It's beyond a financial transaction. The financial transaction, oh, well, what then why take money if it's so fulfilling or whatever? It's like, because money is a boundary by which people declare respect. Money is a boundary by which people commodify and tell you how much they respect your time and your energy, and that they understand that they are taking you away from something else, because when you say yes to someone, you're saying no to something else. That's why we use money as a boundary to denote the allocation of our time. When you say yes to your employer, you're saying this is how much money it takes to remove me from my family for 8 to 10 hours. And your needs might dictate how high or low that boundary is for you at the time. So that's the part of like charging people money for something, is it becomes, if I say yes to this, and if there's a demand and this many people are wanting me to say yes to something, then I'm saying no to something else. And you have to decide what you want more and what you want most. So I say all that to say that teaching in person in groups, teaching virtually in groups, teaching one-on-one in groups of one person at a time, 30 people at a time, 300 people at a time, a room of 500 people at a time, a massive stage of where you have 1,500 people in a ballroom. It is humbling because we dismiss those numbers in the context of social media, because we have the false perception of the abundance of people willing to follow, listen to, and support an individual. We have a false perception of that abundance because algorithms show us people who have that in abundance. Algorithms show us millionaires, billionaires, social media millionaires and billionaires, people who are elites, people who are 1.1%. We have an unhealthy and disproportionate exposure to 0.1 percenters, and therefore internalize the gap that exists between us and them, and it perpetuates an insecurity of have not, to where we're dismissive of the value of one-on-one. We're dismissive of the support of 10 people, which used to be a much bigger deal 20 years ago. 10 people at any point watching you is a big deal. 10 people showing up to your birthday party is a big deal. Having 10 really good friends who memorized your phone number, like 10 people showing up if you're in a hospital room, is like, oh my God, you're so loved. And now when we get the support of 10 strangers, sight unseen, we're dismissive of the value of that, and we're dismissive of the commitment and the trust put into us as another stranger when they support us, because we see the false abundance of the people at the very tippy top who have that at such a ridiculous scale. And then it makes it nothing to us, and we become desensitized. And so we're not appreciative of the 1, the 10, the 100, the 1,000. And yet, all you'd have to do to beat 88% of videos on YouTube is get 1,500 views on a video, and you've beaten almost 90% all the content that's ever existed, minus YouTube Shorts. All the content that's ever existed, you beat 90% of it with just 1,500 views. Just 1,500 views. 1,500 views is probably the equivalent of filling up the stands for a high school pep rally. And so imagine that you're the person down there on the court, the center of attention. Oh, I only got 1,500 views on a video. You literally fill the entire auditorium of your school and have the center of attention. If you had to physically perform in front of 1,500 people, it is embarrassing. It is anxiety inducing. There are not 1,500 people in those bleachers on Times Square. And if you had to perform in front of them, like, it's literally less than 1,000 people, but it's Times Square. You'd immediately be embarrassed and intimidated to perform your YouTube content and everything like that. But people will cry about not getting that level of attention, but they couldn't handle it if it was physically in the presence. So it's humbling. The day that you ever perform in person in front of hundreds of people, you now don't dismiss thousands of views on YouTube just because you didn't go viral. I feel that the viral craze and the desire for it partly is from people who've never had a certain amount of real attention, because if you did, it wouldn't mean nearly as much to go viral. Because I think the fact that you cannot see and perceive the strangers behind the numbers, it internally diminishes the value, but it shouldn't. It is still a real person on the other end, if you don't have a bunch of bots, that is putting some faith in you and putting some support behind you. And so I think about that quite a bit in the age of social media, of how we've dehumanized the numbers behind our audience.
Yeah. And that's something that kind of, when it struck me and hit me the hardest, was when I got recognized for the first time outside of my YouTube channel when I was at GameStop. And someone was like, "Wait, you're the person that does the reviews on YouTube. You're the hipster." And I'm just like, I was shook, as the kids say. I was so incredibly taken aback, and it made me perceive the numbers in a completely different way, because it's like I treated milestones when I first started the same way that I treat them now, because I am so incredibly fortunate and lucky. But it added a layer on top of that, of where it's like, holy shit, like this person who doesn't even like know me personally and I don't know them watches my content, and she seems so grateful for it. And it's like it added a whole new level to it of existence that I never thought was possible to a degree. So I completely get what you're saying entirely. What is the top game that you would say that is your personal cozy game? It doesn't have to be in the realm of like Stardew Valley or anything like that.
Let me think. I mean, I do enjoy Stardew Valley, but weirdly, probably it might be still like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, probably, which is interesting. Like, so probably that. And after you beat it and you go through the story, and it's a lovely story, it's such a beautiful story. I really want them to just finish a trilogy with that, and I think there's room for a trilogy with that, because they really didn't explore a lot with the Triforce itself after the first one. Because like in Tears of the Kingdom, there's almost no real reference to the Triforce and everything like that. It actually revolves much more around the Master Sword and around the lore of Hyrule itself, but absent the Triforce and the goddess Hylia, to be honest with you. And I think that what they opened up with the dragons, and that the dragons also might be avatars of the three goddesses of the Triforce, in terms of the three maidens, could be, they could open that up with a trilogy, since now we know that there's a forbidden lore element to becoming a dragon by swallowing a sacred stone. I think that they should just finish that trilogy. Zelda games are just always my go-to and always my happy place. So like, I still need to get Echoes of Wisdom. I really also enjoyed the remake of Link's Awakening, and I liked the art style for that, interestingly enough. Never got into Wind Waker though. I never liked that art style though. It's like, it was just I never liked the art style for it, to be honest with you. But ironically, I like the super deformed chibi like version for Echoes of Wisdom and for Link's Awakening that they did. So I like that. But then aside from that, I just want realistic art styles. I just like epic Link and Zelda and Sheik and all that stuff from Ocarina. I just like that style. I think that if they do A Link to the Past remake, they should probably do it like the for a top-down overview style Zelda should always, in my opinion, be done in the way that Echoes of Wisdom and Link's Awakening is done. So if they do A Link to the Past remake for the Switch, I want it done in the same style as Link's Awakening. And if you're going to do a top-down Zelda, just do it that way.
Interesting. So, when you mentioned Wind Waker, that was actually the very first Zelda game I ever played back in the day.
Really? Yeah, no. Old school. I played the original Zelda. And then for me, for a long time, it was A Link to the Past. It was the Super Nintendo era. In fact, like, if anything, ironically, the emulation for on Switch for the Super Nintendo era of gaming might be my happy place, to be honest.
I love that. Yeah, it's really cool that you bring that up, because I remember when I was asked on a podcast, like, what are your top 5 games that you go to, and the one that I always go back to is Death Stranding. Even though Resident Evil 1 remake was the first game I ever played, and it's always going to be a comfort game for me, it's oddly enough not the game that I always go back to. It's either Death Stranding, Elden Ring, or what is it, Cozy Grove, where you are just this kind of like Girl Scout that's helping bears who are ghosts pass on and clearing out the forest. And it's very, I don't know, it's just very nice. It's very pleasant to go through. Either that or what's the name of it? Don't Starve. Don't Starve is such a blast to go through.
My sister, she's not hardcore or anything like that. She's both of my sisters are very casual gamer girls. They're very casuals, but my sister Ariana really always actually enjoyed watching me play games, which is where the irony is like I had a love-hate relationship with watching my uncle and my older cousins play video games, because I'm like, I wanted my turn. Which is where, for me, that was the irony of YouTube gaming. I'm like, why are we watching people play games instead of like playing? But on the other hand, there are some people who actually enjoy watching other people play and know that they're not great at games and want to see other people and want to also like cheer with them and celebrate with them and also like be like, hey, try again and stuff. And my sister was very much the support role cheerleader type when it came to watching me play games, and she enjoyed the storytelling of the games and she enjoyed art of the games and everything like that, but didn't necessarily have this desire to beat the game, aside from wanting to know how the story ends or wanting to. There are experiences that can be enjoyed in the game even without beating it, and there are satisfying moments. But watching me play was something she genuinely enjoyed because it was watching someone control a story. So it was like watching a movie that someone controls and enjoying it with them and enjoying the struggles. I would liken it to Bastian Buck's reading The Never-Ending Story, if you've ever seen that film from the 80s.
Yes.
And loving and seeing, and yeah, you probably like tear up every time I tweet about heart attacks.
Yes.
Try.
Let's go for it.
You have to try. It's like it was so. No, I tearing up now. That scene was the best emotional storytelling. It's my problem with modern films is I'm like, modern films do not get anyone as emotionally invested in their protagonist as we are invested in a bloody horse in the 80s that we bawl our tears out for. There's a lack of depth in storytelling. And I bring this back to the fact that, like, with my sister, she liked me play games in the same way that I feel like Bastian reading about Atreyu and his struggles and everything like that was like, okay, I don't necessarily want to be there, but I feel the connected by watching you go through these struggles. And it's like, so it was this empathy, it's like
exactly
for hero's struggle, for watching the hero's journey.
And it's the same with the horror stories that are being told right now. I remember back in the day with the Blair Witch Project, that was the most iconic piece of horror that came out because it was that unknown. It was more or less YouTube vloggers who didn't even exist then were doing their own thing and creating a piece for us to get immersed into. And so many people thought that was real. I being one of those people, I got to meet the director when I was in college for a film class that I took, and I asked him, I was like, how did you make it so that we would believe that it was actually real? And he said, we took people who weren't actors and put them in an actually realistic situation.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the beginning of the concept of the reality TV. As much as sometimes I don't reality TV, the investment is that you're watching people who don't pretend to be someone else for a living. The investment is you're watching people be obnoxious, be flawed, and therefore you're watching the human element of someone just like them. If you're not like them, someone just like them. And so now you're invested and you have some sense of stakes and some emotionality behind that. And the thing is, with the old storytelling in video games and movies from the older era, is they understood the need and importance of emotional investment It's not that they lacked messages or that they lacked politics. It's that they did not do any of those things at the expense of emotional investment from the audience and getting you to value a story even if you don't agree with its message. That's the thing. Now people cannot value anything where they disagree with the message of something, and they cannot give it any credit for the things it does well or the things that it does right, or something. Now it's fine to criticize something that says it doesn't live up to its potential. That would be my criticism. For example, I know it's super contentious. The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi, I can appreciate its cinematography. I can appreciate elements and themes. Even to a degree, the failure I find with the treatment of Luke Skywalker's character is not that you have a broken hero that's no longer the embodiment and symbol of hope. I would actually say that there is some disappointment with that because we have too much realism and people need hope, and that's even one of the themes of Star Wars, because like Lucas originally wanted to end the original trilogy. He said that the true ending is Luke turning to the dark side, and that's his arc, and that's supposed to be the stakes. And that originally he actually planned to have Luke fall to the dark side, and there was supposed to be someone, not Leia, be the true savior and come in, and that was supposed to be his twin sister, but he didn't have enough space for the storytelling. Like, Lucas talked about this in interviews for years, but he's like, I had to condense everything, and then this is for children at the end of the day, and I didn't want the legacy of this to be some dark ending. I wanted to end on a happy note. Good has to triumph over evil. That's the message I wanted to tell more than anything, and I found a way to do it with economical storytelling. So he still wanted a positive message of hope and redemption. He decided that message is more important than the theatrics and thematic theme of where I was going, but I'm not going to sacrifice storytelling to get there. I'm not going to sacrifice storytelling there. In Rian Johnson's film, which I don't think is inherently a bad film, I think it's a flawed film. I think that the failure was we never ever truly get to see what robbed Luke of his hope and what broke him, and that's an injustice. Because you should feel something like we did when Atreyu lost Hartax in the Swamp of Sorrows. The agony of that moment, the physical embodiment of watching, someone we care about, in this case being a horse, literally, but we're anthropomorphizing a horse, seeing the actual visceral embodiment of someone sinking into despair and depression and being unwilling to even pick themselves up, to even try, to be so overwhelmed. And you're showing that to kids, and you're teaching kids existentialism. And it's like, in a real way, that is such economical storytelling. It's so powerful. It's so compelling. Why are all we're getting is exposition and hokey flashbacks in terms of robbing the embodiment of hope, of his hope, and putting him through despair? You did not make... my biggest problem is you should have showed Luke Skywalker suffer on screen. You should have showed that suffering. You should have made us cry. You should have made us bleed with him. You should have done that. If you're going to do a deconstruction of a character that represents hope, you have to show how hope is torn down one brick at a time and make us feel the loss.
It's interesting you bring that up, because there's two games that I would highly recommend for people that have that kind of storytelling. If you want something that's very substantial in the way that it grows with the player, Frambo and Death's Door. Frambo is one of those games of where it shows depression, it shows self-harm, it shows a lot of these different topics that are prevalent in a lot of millennials, actually. And I don't know how prevalent it is in Gen Z, because that's not my generation, so I'm not going to speak for them, but it's
younger sibling that's Gen Z, and then I have another younger sibling that's like right between Gen Z yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's very interesting to see that game in and of itself, it shows kind of the desperate solitude that someone experiences when they're taken away from their family or taken away from what they normally know. And then Death's Door is actually a great piece in teaching kids about death and what it is like it as a concept, as a whole. So when you have kind of like, you're talking at the very end of the game, you're talking with death, you're talking with them, and that they wanted to create this balance in the world. And I find it so fascinating, to be honest, because you have this kind of thing that's, basically being anthropomorphized as a concept, and we're turning it into a tangible living thing.
You're taking the abstraction of a cosmic scale entity and an abstract universal construct, and anthropomorphizing it and using it as a storytelling device. And that's super fascinating. They also did that in storytelling in the series Supernatural. In a lot of ways, they would take universal constructs and then anthropomorphize them and give them human-like qualities. And so that I always thought that was a very fascinating approach in the writing. Although I did like the more gritty Monster of the Week version of its first two seasons before they jumped the shark, but I still found the later seasons that was at least interesting in terms of, oh, that's an interesting narrative device that they decided they were going to use, and that was, oh, that's clever, or oh, wow, I like this idea of Death being this old dude who's like a foodie and really appreciates deep dish pizza and everything like that, and is like, yeah, I'll spare Chicago just for the pizza. like the I'm like, that's so petty that if I were the embodiment of that's exactly how I would be. Like that, I would be that. I'd be like, oh no, it's like we spare humanity for the food. Like that's like, yeah, I like that as an anime fan too. With Beerus the Destroyer, it's like, oh well, no, if the food's good, you're fine.
Like, yeah, exactly. And you know what's interesting? You brought up a topic that I was going to ask you about next. Of what Marvel character do you best associate yourself with?
Old school Peter Parker, in terms of we've lived the similar life. Because the thing is, people would think, all right, so when I have kids, like they'll identify with Miles Morales because we're Black Latino, right? But they'll only on the fact that, oh yeah, he's the storytelling of culture, and that's exactly how you would be as a Spider-Man now. But my kid would be a Miles Morales, but I would still be Peter Parker because I struggled like Peter Parker. You see what I'm saying? Miles Morales grew up in this very wonderful, tight-knit, still had a nuclear family intact. You know, parents are still together, still in love. You know, his parents are the pillar of the community. As a father in law enforcement and a mother is a nurse, they're the pillars of sacrifice, and they are these things. And he has his family is whole, with the exception of the loss of his uncle Aaron, who wanted to try to be right, do right, but couldn't get there. You know, so any kids that come from me would identify with Miles Morales because I raised, sacrificed, and struggled, just like Miles's parents. You know, but Miles's parents themselves would relate to Peter Parker because they had to fight and come up, and Peter Parker had to go through. Okay, he didn't have his whole family intact in that way. He struggled to support his Aunt May. Like, I relate to that, you know? He always had these financial difficulties, these stress. He's brilliant, but he couldn't be a good student because his home life wasn't really good. Misunderstood, not appreciated, bullied. Works his way into things, is gifted with fantastic abilities and talent. Not just the gifts of becoming the amazing Spider-Man, but also his pure brilliance and his heart, creativity. Peter Parker is someone who should have been successful if he had been given a stable home life. Norman Osborn sees him in that, you know. Dr. Octavius sees that in him. All these brilliant people see Peter's potential, and then they blame him for what they feel is not living up to it. But what Peter suffers from is he's being pulled in so many directions at once that he can't focus. And if he could only focus on one or two areas or dimension of his life, he could have absolute mastery of those areas of life. When he commits and he is nothing but Spider-Man and he's Peter Parker no more, and he's only Spider-Man, he cleans up New York. Like, when he does that. When he decides, I'm Spider-Man no more, all of a sudden he's a top performing student. When he decides, oh, I'm Spider-Man no more, and he does Parker Industries, he becomes so powerful that he becomes the evil CEO of Alchemax when he's Spider-Man. When he ditches Spider-Man, he becomes the most powerful, ruthless CEO of all time. Like, he can be successful if he picks a lane to stay in. That's so interesting. And so I feel that just as a millennial, that I have to pick Peter Parker because Peter Parker represents the struggle of millennials and Gen X and the sense of always being burdened with responsibility and never being able to necessarily always reach your potential, and it just being out of reach and having those focus issues and having so many demands and things pull you apart, but also being burdened by the losses that come from those shortcomings, right? would represent the next generation because Miles is the embodiment of hope. Miles is the embodiment, and I love Miles so much as a character because he's not just a Peter Parker clone. He's the legacy of Spider-Man, much in the same way I love Terry McGinnis in Batman Beyond. I feel that Terry McGinnis and Miles Morales represent this concept of legacy, of what lives on, of like the fact that we can pass on the mantle and pass on our levels, and that for the next generation, they don't have to be burdened by our bitterness and our hardship, and we can pass on our mantle without passing on our traumas. But sometimes there's a relationship also, and we share struggles too. And so, you know, with Miles, I believe he's the embodiment of hope in the face of adversity. And I believe that Peter embodies grace. Peter embodies, I'll suffer all these things, but I will bear it with grace and dignity, and with a quip and a smile, and with a light heart, and will laugh at myself and try and despite everything I'm going through, not give in to despair, you know. And Miles, so like Peter is the embodiment of grace and overcoming adversity. Miles is the embodiment of hope and the idea of being your own person and dictating your own story, and people not telling you who you have to be or who you are. And so Miles' story is very powerful and impactful, I think, for people coming of age and young people. But I don't think his story in any way takes away or diminishes from Peter Parker. Peter Parker belongs to anyone who wants to embrace that or anyone who's going through that. But he's the embodiment of millennials and Gen X and where we come from and what our lives look like. Because look at Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Tom Holland's Peter Parker is he doesn't have the solid, stable home life of Miles Morales, but Peter Parker in the Tom Holland universe is a winner. He's a winner. He's winning at the science fair. He's winning early with the girls between Liz and then later with MJ. Like, he's a winner. He's Tony Stark's favorite. He's at this great magnet school, like, because again, in a modern world, Peter Parker is that winner. He's that come up story. Yeah, he can come from a poor background, but he would win in this society. And I'm glad that in the Tom Holland version of Spider-Man, they acknowledge that this Peter Parker can only lose by via a tragedy and can only lose on his reputation and being slandered and maligned, like with the Mysterio gambit and stuff like that. You'd have to go out of your way to tear down this Peter Parker because the virtue of who he is inherently makes somebody a winner if you are that. So my contention was always Peter Parker cannot lose if he's born in the year 2000. If he's born in 2000, if he's born in 1996, Peter Parker can't lose anymore. There's no way in hell. Like, he's a winner in that world, but because if you take pictures of Spider-Man, you can be viral and you can make money if you can take pictures of Spider-Man in the 2020s, so you can't lose. If you're as smart as Peter Parker, you could be a tech startup founder, you could be Zuckerberg. If you're smart enough to create tensile spider webs and a delivery system for that, if you're Peter Parker, you're getting government funding. Like, you're going to be a multimillionaire if you're Peter Parker. You're going to get Tony Stark's grant. You're going to be his favorite. You're going to go work at the Baxter Building, and you're going to be with Reed. Like, you can't lose. So, like, I'm glad they figured out how to make that work with Tom Holland's thing, because Peter Parker can't lose in a modern world. That's why he's closer to a Miles Morales in the Tom Holland cycle. But Miles has a cultural story that resonates that's different, for immigrant, for people of color. So Miles is different, but Miles is also, even if you're not an immigrant or a person of color, Miles is relatable because Miles is a product of the time he was born into. And he's a product of that environment and those values. And he's a product of the Brooklyn of today. Whereas Peter Parker is a product of the Queens of that millennials and Gen X remember.
Oh yeah, no, my gosh, I'm so glad that, by the way, you picked Peter Parker, because by far my favorite superhero in Marvel is Spider-Man. Like, I grew up with Tobey Maguire. I grew up reading the comics. Like, that is part of, like, what my identity is. So I'm so happy that you mentioned this. Because it's interesting. Like, for me, if I were to pick, it would be a combination between an anti-hero and and someone who's normal. Like, I'm more of a combination of MJ and Morbius. Because I had a lot of, like, the physical restrictions when I was younger. I had a lot of, like, the medical stuff that was going on. Not what he had at all, but I associate so deeply with that character because through finding a way through that, he found his power. He found his potential. And because of MJ, it's because I'm quirky. I'm a journalist and I love reporting on things and getting deeper and deeper into the subject matter of something. So for me, it's like those characters mean so much to me. And I know people like to pick on the film Morbius a lot, but for me it's like I love it so much because it brought to life a character in my head that I only read about in the comics when I was a kid, and it means the world to me in ways that I cannot express. Like, for me, I'm such a comic book nerd. Like, Marvel by far is my favorite. DC used to be my favorite, but Marvel by far does writing so much better in my opinion because it takes the humanity and it brings it to the characters in another level entirely.
I agree with you. I think one of the best and most poignant examples of this is the Demon in a Bottle storyline with Tony Hawk's alcoholism in Iron Man. And like, as a lot of people were saying, oh, well, there was never any deep writing in the Iron Man. So it was like Demon in a Bottle. Like, so I was like, I'm like, yeah, that. So yeah, no, I agree with you. And then in terms of like anti-heroes, I like everything they've been doing with Eddie Brock and Venom, but in terms of anti-heroes, for me it's not Marvel. It's always, in a way, going to be Anakin Skywalker.
Oh, that's okay. I see.
I think as a child I resonated with Vader because I understood that he's not evil for evil. Even in the way that Lucas is so brilliant in his writing in the original trilogy. Darth Vader, aside from the torture of Han Solo, which that was one mistake I think in Lucas's writing in the original trilogy. There was several, but the torture of Han Solo and then Han saying they didn't even ask me any questions like that. I think it underscored a problem with Vader because other than that, Vader never did anything on screen once without a reason aside from that. In the entire original trilogy, Darth Vader never committed a malicious or violent act without a reason. He was a very tempered version of villainy, unlike in many ways the Emperor, because there was no real reason for the Emperor to just torture Luke with Force lightning. He was doing that for enjoyment. You could see in Ian McDiarmid's performance just how much he's enjoying and relishing just tormenting young Skywalker right then and just savoring it. And in the novelization, he even is gleeful about the fact that when he's done, he's going to force Lord Vader to throw his son's body down the shaft of the Death Star into the heart of it. Like, he's in the novelization, like Palpatine is relishing in that moment of victory and like thinking even about what comes next and thinking about how he's going to punish Vader by making him, throw away the body of his son and cast him off. And it's like, and how that's going to be a lesson for him. And it's like, so Palpatine is a true sociopath. He's evil for evil's sake. Like, true psychopath. He's a true psychopath. He's evil for the sake of it. Now, Vader is a byproduct, not excusing all of his actions, but like he's a byproduct of trauma. He's a byproduct of everything and the way that everyone ultimately failed Anakin Skywalker, and then how he failed himself. Anakin Skywalker failed himself and failed to overcome his trauma and his burdens. And that there's a resonance with that. And while people would say, well, isn't Anakin Skywalker a hero? It's like, I would argue he's an anti-hero because he has a lot of conflict and anger and hatred even when he's a Jedi, and he ultimately does fail. So he's a fallen hero. But it's also not all his fault. He wasn't merely seduced by the dark side. Obi-Wan oversimplified that, and I think that there was somewhat of an abdication of responsibility on Obi-Wan's part in that regard. They address initially at the end of Revenge of the Sith, because he says constantly, I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you. He does take responsibility and accountability in Revenge of the Sith. That he failed him. The Order as a whole failed Anakin Skywalker. There's so many moments to turn that around. And he could never be seduced by the Emperor and the dark side if the people around him had even just a sliver more empathy and thoughtfulness about his actual circumstance of where he came from, in what happened to him and what that means for his emotional development. Instead, they're burdening him with being the chosen one and the perfect Jedi without ever healing the hurts of a boy who was subjected to slavery and whose mother died in his arms after being ripped away from her for the benefit of others, to be a child soldier. So they never addressed the emotional hurts of an orphan, a slave, and they didn't take any accountability or responsibility for raising a child soldier, and then is surprised that ended badly for them. So like, that's my read of Anakin Skywalker, and why I look at him as probably the most tragic hero in fiction, and why I think he's also great as an anti-hero, and why I view Vader not purely as a villain. If anything, I view him as an anti-hero, because ultimately he destroys the Emperor and restores balance to the Force and to the galaxy. And even his pitch to Luke wasn't, join me and we can take revenge, or join me and we can punish all these, people, or do this. Remember what his pitch was: join me and we can end this destructive conflict, and we can rule as father and son. We can be a family. We can save your friends. We can, his pitch to Luke was, we can make it all right. We can do all these things. That's not necessarily the pitch of a evil man.
An evil man doesn't want harmony.
and family. And and the thing is, in that pitch, the novelization of The Empire Strikes Back, because a lot of people dismiss this novelization, Vader was 100% sincere. Vader was sincere, and Vader was heartbroken when Luke threw himself off the shaft there in Cloud City, because Luke was attempting suicide. It didn't happen that way, but Luke was attempting suicide in that moment, and Darth Vader was heartbroken because everyone leaves him. He lost his apprentice, he lost his wife, he felt betrayed by his master, he felt betrayed by his order, his mother died in his arms. Everyone leaves me. I'm alone. I'm not enough. No matter what sacrifices I make, no matter what power I have, no matter what I endure, no matter how much I give myself to the dark side or to the Force, is never enough. And I cannot stop the people I love from dying. I cannot stop the people I love from leaving. I cannot heal or be whole. That's like what Vader's going through in that moment. And it's sad. It's this truly tragic thing for him to feel abandoned, alone, and rejected. And for him being a slave and an orphan, this is the worst thing that could have possibly happened to him. Is the last bastion of family he has left, would rather die than join him, and would rather die than embrace him and accept the truth of their relationship and their bond. It's this terrible thing that happened to him, and he was twisted by forces outside of himself, and the fact that everyone wanted to use him to a purpose and he never got to be his own person. Think about it. When he's introduced to us, he says, "I'm a person and my name is Anakin." And that identity and his personhood was robbed of him slowly throughout the prequels, and we see the what is stripped down of him, and how he's even dehumanized in the original trilogy, where his master Obi-Wan, a man who raised him from childhood, is speaking of him so dispassionately. Oh, he's more machine now than man. The good man that was your father was destroyed. There's no semblance of any belief or compassion, or a belief that any humanity or anything worth saving exists in this individual anymore. That's pretty harsh. I'm not saying he didn't do terrible things, but that's a lot. And that's someone, again, and it's and what, Obi-Wan, you're not taking any real responsibility here for the fact that that's the person that you raised and what you created?
Man, it's so interesting to hear the story. And this is from a perspective of someone who, you are a really big fan of this series. I not so much. And it's so interesting to hear that perspective because I get a new lens on the story of Star Wars, you know? So, I mean, I was a fan of Star Wars actually back in the day when I saw, oh God, I think it was
Phantom Menace.
It was, yeah, I think it was Phantom Menace when Natalie Portman was playing in the movie. Yeah, that was the only. Yeah, that was the only movie I ever saw from that, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is really cool." I was such a young kid when I saw it too, so it made a very like a very big impression on me. And then afterwards, I feel like the concept and story of Star Wars was only brought back fairly recently. It got lost along the way a little bit, I think. But the last question I want to ask you is: when you are done for the day and you finished work and everything is all said and done, what is the food that you go to as a pick-me-up? Is something like, okay, I deserve this, I'm gonna get this?
If I'm feeling for fruit, it'll be mangoes, and I like a lot of times I'll actually put red pepper on it, or I'll even make a mango salad and I'll use red and black pepper and vinegar, and then I'll chop up a bunch of mangoes and I'll like have that. Um, it's really good. Or in terms of like something substantial as like a meal, I love sushi and I love ramen. Like so, like traditional ramen. Like so, there's a place I'll go to, up the road. It's about maybe 12 minutes up the road, and they give you this big bowl of ramen. And so, the anime nerd in me will sit there and will, have like the versions of ramen that like Naruto would like. Like his apparently favorite is miso ramen. So like sometimes I'll go, oh, yeah, I'll just have a miso ramen. And so I'll like have a miso ramen. I think for my birthday, it was either my sister or it was my best friend, like, bought me like a Naruto ramen bowl. I also have a Princess Mononoke ramen bowl as well. So like, yeah, so ramen is a big thing. I also know how to make, it's more challenging than people think. I know how to make traditional ramen, but it's a chore. It's a lot. So hats off to all the ramen chefs. It's like, if you have a ramen chef, tip them, like, cause that stuff's hard. That stuff's a labor of love. So ramen, love sushi. Love sushi. Plantain. So yeah, those. So yeah, so like for my family's Panamanian, so like plantain and mango is like traditional comfort foods. Like the weeb in me loves ramen and sushi, and then yeah. So and then in terms of cooking though, I'm a big fan of like I can cook the hell out of, because I'm good at like not only cooking but the seasoning. Like I'm very good at steak, and people think like, oh, steak, that's a nothing thing. No, doing a steak properly is actually like quite a bit of thoughtfulness, especially if you're going to season it and everything like that. So I have a whole like rigorous process that I go through and everything like that in preparing a steak, and I cook it. I prefer to cook it to medium well, just to make sure nobody ever gets sick, like, and to just, so like you have just enough pink in there to still feel like it's tender, juicy, savory. And so like me, I'll like do a whole soak, and I'll clean the meat, and I'll clean the meat in vinegar, but I'll also soak it in vinegar. I also find that tenderizes it quite, so it's a lot more tender the longer I let it soak in vinegar. And then also I go ahead and I do a lot of the seasoning for it in there, if I don't take it as far as doing a whole marinade and everything like that. So usually white apple vinegar, and so.
Very nice. That sounds so delicious right now. I haven't had breakfast yet, so that sounds incredibly yummy right now. For me, normally my go-to is if it's what?
Steak and eggs.
You know what? That I have actually steak in the freezer, so I might defrost some and do that. So for me, if I'm gonna have something quick, it's going to be blueberries, because that's my go-to snack. I love blueberries a lot. But if, like you said, if it's something more substantial, and it's something that I'm craving, it's a calzone with mushroom and broccoli in it. Absolutely. If it's something I'm going to make, that's going to be a steak salad. It's going to be stuff that has like crushed up wontons inside of it, blueberries, rare steak, because I'm a rare steak person, and then it's going to be, oh gosh, what dressing do I use? I usually use tzatziki dressing on a lot of my salads, so that's really what I have.
Yeah, no, for salads, very much. There's a place that I used to go to when I lived in New York, Lenwich. You're probably familiar with it. Yeah, no. So I love language salad sandwiches and stuff like that. I would always get cut up like chopped romaine, chickpeas, breaded chicken, and everything. I would get peppers. So I get banana peppers, bell peppers, and stuff like that. And no croutons, and then I'd have them do a balsamic vinaigrette, and that would be my go-to salad at Lenwich. And oh yeah, sometimes I'd let them also pepper and corn. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Yeah, and people underestimate salads and how good they can be. Honestly, they're so yummy. But Roberto, I do want to say thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. It was so much fun, not only to talk about nerd stuff, but to talk about content creation in general. So I really appreciate it. Again, all of his links will be down in the description below, so you guys can check him out, possibly take some of his courses, enjoy his content, and much more. But if you guys like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. May you find your worth in the waking world, dear hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video, podcast, or review. Bye.